Welcome into another live Patriots Beat podcast. I am Brian Hines, filling in the host chair today, joined by 98.5's Alex Barth. And Alex, if you thought the DeAndre Hopkins rumors were going away, they are not. They are back. The Cardinals.
Hang on, Ryan. Hang on. I don't mean to cut you off here. It's your first show. Introduce yourself to the people.
We got to introduce.
We can have some fun with this. Yes.
I thought you liked to just get right into the football here.
I generally do, but I think it's kind of hilarious that you are host number 4 in like 9 months. So, this is Brian. Brian's going to be taking over and for a little bit here, and just wanted to let people know who you were, where you're from before we really jump into this.
Yep. So you can find me on patspulpit.com. Read all my stuff there. Not a whole clean slate protocol, as Bill O'Brien would say, as Alex is still here, but a new host. Alex is like our Mac Jones with plenty of offensive coordinators, but
yeah, kind of.
We move on. So NFL news, DeAndre Hopkins, the Cardinals, somewhat surprisingly released him outright. They couldn't find a trade partner likely to due to his salary over the long week before the long weekend. My first thoughts were them releasing him was kind of bad news for the Patriots because now he has his pick of teams, right? He said on that podcast he wants to play. He listed 5 quarterbacks: Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Lamar, and Herbert. So it sounded like Patriots weren't involved, but if he wants money, the Patriots could go that route and offer him money. So where are you kind of on the Hopkins rumors now that they're back in centerfold here?
I'd still like to see them get him. And by the way, was just officially processed now. I know some people are wondering why that move wasn't officially processed on Friday. Field Yates just tweeting out that it made the wire today. I'd like to see them at him because, again, I think you need to get that coverage dictating player for the Patriots, that guy who's going to force other secondaries to look a certain way and certainly help out Mac Jones, a very quarterback-friendly receiver. He had the 11th highest QB rating when targeted in the NFL last year among qualified receivers. And think about who was throwing him the ball. It wasn't the quarterback making those plays, right? Especially late in the year when he came back because he missed the beginning of the season with that suspension. I actually think him getting released maybe helps the Patriots because his contract was absurd. It was, and I'm honestly not totally surprised he got released because that contract was so ridiculous. And I know some people thought, well, maybe he signs and redoes the deal, but apparently he didn't. And if he wasn't going to do that, I don't think he was ever going to get traded. So it helps the Patriots because now they can get him on the deal that they want. And there are multiple reports out there that they do want him. The question is, will they want him for the dollar amount? I don't know that they can simply outbid the Chiefs and the Bills. And that was the report this morning that those two teams are the front runners to land him. I don't know that it's simply like the Bills offer $1 million and you offer $1.1 million, right? I think they have to really blow him away financially. They do have the room to do it. Do they have the want to do it? That's what the question is going to be.
And it would interest Bill now more because he doesn't have to give up a draft pick, right? It's just money.
Right, no comp pick, no nothing. It's just money.
I think it was Breer I think it was this morning that he was reportedly looking at like half of his salary from what he was supposed to make, which was right over $19 million, I think. So half of that, and then he would get the rest backs and incentives. So maybe around a $10 million, which, I mean, the cap is always can be finagled. The cap hits if they want to do whatever. But the Patriots, they're right around 13 million. So they have room to do it. And yeah, it would make sense from a football perspective because would you say he's still, if he came in right now, he's your best receiver?
Oh, yeah. And I know people are talking about his age and did he fall off? And he had the PED suspension and the injury. And look, I don't think he's perfect. I don't think he's a slam dunk. But the reality is, if there was a receiver who was a slam dunk number 1 wideout, he's not going to be available on May 30th, right? That's not how this league works. That's not how this league has ever worked. A couple things when you look at him. First off, when he did play last year, played 9 games, he caught 64 passes for a little over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. His 17-game pace. So you extrapolate the numbers he had last year out to a full season. And keep in mind, this is with the revolving door of dumpster fires they had at quarterback after Kyler Murray got hurt. 121 catches, 1,300 yards, 6 touchdowns. That was his full season pace, which is excellent. The other thing is, and the numbers are there and they back this up, and this would be the reason I'd be the most hesitant about Hopkins. Receiver play generally drops off pretty hard at the age of 30, and very much so at the age of 31. And Hopkins is going to be entering his age 31 season. He turns 31 next week. So I'm a little apprehensive there, but that's the average. The one thing you can say for him is a lot of that is because that's when speed drops off. How often are these burner receivers good into their 30s, right? Yeah. Hopkins is never won on speed. That's never been his game. It's not to say he's slow. I mean, he's fast enough, but he's not in that Tyreek Hill category, right? Nobody's going to call him a burner. Nobody's going to call him a speed receiver. He wins based off of, route running, body control, just strong hand, things that don't age the way speed ages. So whereas most receivers drop off around age 30, 31, realistically, and the numbers last year back it up, he's not going to age the same way most receivers do. He should have a couple more years. So he's a guy being on, I don't know that I'm giving him like a 5-year deal.
No,
right.
No.
But if you can get him for like 2 or 3 years, the contract I threw out when we first started this, I think it was like 3 years. I had researched this and I don't remember what my basis for this was, but there was a basis at one point. It was like 3 years, 36 million. Right. And you call it, or I think it was 3 years, 40, 36 guaranteed, something like that. You give him like 13, 14 million a year. You front load the guaranteed money to the first 2 years. So if the third year it's not working, you can let him go really with no cap hit. I think that that's a very reasonable deal for them to do with him because they do need that guy. I think they've done, for the most part, they've done a very good job of addressing their other needs, whether it be boundary corner, whether it be depth at tight end, whether it be adding a pass rusher. I think they've done a lot of that. Tackle would be the other exception here. But if they can get a true number one wide receiver, which I still think Hopkins can be at least for a year or two, and that buys you time, whether it's dipping into a stronger draft class next year or a guy like Kayshon Boutte developing and really hitting his ceiling, but it buys you time and it gives you help for your young quarterback, which should be the paramount focus right now.
And I see the argument in the chat. If you bring Hopkins in, you have Parker, Bourne, Thornton, Juju, all these guys in the mix. Do you go, because Hopkins would come in and probably be your X. So does that make a guy like maybe Devontae Parker expandable and, getting rid of him frees up $6 million, which you could also use to pay Hopkins, hypothetically.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, if you ever want to bring something up in the chat, just click it. It comes right up. Right. So I think you have access to that, but you should. If you do, if you ever want to bring up a comment, you can just click it. It brings it up. Learning live on the show here. Yeah, so I think Parker probably becomes the odd man out. I saw some people saying Kendrick Bourne, different skill sets. Yeah. Very different skill sets. Hopkins is going to you're not going to put DeAndre Hopkins in Kendrick Bourne's role. Mm-hmm. So cutting him doesn't really do anything. DeAndre Hopkins is going to there's no role for Devontae Parker if DeAndre Hopkins is here. I don't see where his snaps are coming from. Certainly not the snaps to justify his contract. So he's the odd man out. At the very least, I think he would have to take a pay cut to stay. They talked to him about a contract restructure, but he's probably the guy that's gone because you're bringing Hopkins in to play the X for what you're going to pay him for his skill set. He's going to be a guy that's on the field 85, 90% of the time. I don't think Devontae Parker has a ton of formational versatility. I don't think you're going to look at him and say, all right, well, we're going to play you at the Z or we're going to play you in the slot. He can't really do that. So in my mind, it would definitely be Parker as the odd man out.
Yeah. And the one kind of wild card we still don't know is the whole Bill O'Brien relationship, because obviously things went sour at the end of their Houston tenure. And I saw there was an article on NFL.com. It was Nick Shook, I believe, wrote it, who I wasn't too familiar with the name. And I wasn't sure if he was sourcing this or this was speculation, but he was listing possible suitors for DeAndre Hopkins, and he put the Texans in there, and he had a note that he played under there with Bill O'Brien, and that would certainly eliminate O'Brien would certainly eliminate him going to New England. So that's still a bit of a wild card that we don't know exactly how that relationship is a few years down the road now.
So the last definitive answer we got on this, it was shortly after, it was was it the 2020 season O'Brien got fired in Houston, right? Or was it
Yeah.
2019? No, it's 2020 because they traded Hopkins in the spring of 2020 because I'm an idiot and tweeted like a day before when all the rumors were building, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is going to get traded and COVID's going to end tomorrow, which was maybe my worst tweet of all time. But that being said, there was no reason to trade him. They shouldn't have traded him. It was a horrible move. It cost O'Brien his job. My logic was right. I could have picked a better analogy. So after that season, after O'Brien got fired, Hopkins did a Q&A with SI and or was it ESPN or SI? One of the two. I saw it in one, but they linked to the other. But Hopkins basically said, they asked him, was it a bad relationship? He said there was no relationship. And he was like, I want you to put that in. There was no relationship. So I've seen, it's kind of a glass half full, glass half empty thing. How bad do you want DeAndre Hopkins? How do you want to look at that? Is he saying there was no relationship? It was whatever, didn't really think of it that way. I'd worked with him before, worked with him again. Or is it, ice cold? Like who are you talking about? You think I had a relationship with him? So that one's kind of how you read it. I read it more on the negative side. That being said, that was a long time ago. Could for the right money, could Bill O'Brien get them to bury the hatchet? Some of what, and a lot of it's, he said, it was kind of reported, and we don't know exactly how things went. Some of the stuff O'Brien reportedly said was kind of nasty. To what extent that was true, I don't know. I don't really know why it would be made up, but I'm still kind of under the belief that it would at least, I don't know that Hopkins would totally rule it out, but you're going to have to pay him to put up with Bill O'Brien, basically. Whatever you're going to have to pay him to outbid those other teams to begin with, now you also have to add on, call it, a Bill O'Brien surcharge or a Bill O'Brien tax onto that total contract to really swing him.
But he seems to love Bill Belichick. There seems to be a lot of, mutual.
He said he did. Yeah, directly. He said, I love you. Yeah.
And there was that mic'd up clip that was going around all the time. So maybe, that could help swing things, in the Bill O'Brien direction. I think I don't know if it's underrated, but a team like Detroit, I feel like would be really interesting for him. They have a lot of money. They kind of need an X receiver. Him with like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, I feel like that would be a really, really good fit when Williams gets back from his suspension. But I don't know, do you have any like under the radar teams there?
I keep looking at the Chargers, and I tweeted this the other day. Like, why do the Chargers feel like a sleeper? Because it made sense. I couldn't figure out why. I figured out why. Because everybody starts saying to me, "What are you talking about? They just drafted Quentin Johnson, and they have all these guys and whatever." And I think everybody's under the assumption that the Chargers are kind of in this slow buildup for Justin Herbert. F that. Go for it. Go for it. That's why, because they're going to lose Keenan Allen. They're probably going to lose Mike Williams. Right. What?
They always get hurt.
Right. Or no, where they lose him to injury, where they lose him to contract, like that core has kind of been together for a long time by NFL standards, like 2 or 3 years. They're going to start losing pieces quicker than they can add pieces, especially when that Herbert extension gets kicked in. We talk about capitalizing on a young quarterback. If you can afford to pay DeAndre Hopkins a lot of money for 1 year to try to get a ring before you have to pay Herbert, why wouldn't you? And they have zero interest in running the ball. They have zero interest in playing power football. They have zero interest in using tight ends. They can stack their roster with wide receivers and find a way to play everybody between Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins. They'll get all those guys on the field enough. And like you said, guys will get hurt. I think if you're the Chargers and you want to do this whole maximize on the rookie contract thing, getting another wide receiver is the way to go.
Yeah, why not? Switching gears to some other NFL news, not as big as DeAndre Hopkins, but it has some Patriots ties. Offensive tackle Yodny Kajust, who Patriots released earlier this month. He was their third-round pick in 2019. He signed today, and like Isaiah Wynn, he stayed in the division, but he went to the New York Jets, so they'll see Yodny Kajust 2 times a year if he makes that team. I don't think the terms of the deal were out yet, but
no, I haven't seen it.
I'd expect it to be probably 1 year in the low-cost variety.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just, it feels like this year, and teams always sign players within the division because they're the most familiar with them. They got to prepare for them twice a year, but feels like this so more than other years. It's these other teams picking guys up, and I also just think it's interesting along these lines, and we talked about this on the show a couple weeks ago. Yodny Kajus, him getting cut kind of represented the end of that 2019 class. He was the last player here from that year, and that was N'Keal Harry, Juwan Williams, Chase Winovich, Jake Bailey, Damian Harris. Like, that was that season. N'Keal Harry's still unsigned. To think of all in really 18 and 19, right, which was another rough class. Isaiah Wynn is signed. Juwan Williams is signed. Chase Winovich is signed. N'Keal Harry's the one guy, the first-round pick, that can't get a contract of all of them. And I don't know. I find that kind of unbelievable that nobody will even look. Because sometimes you see these guys. How many teams has Kevin White been on, Brian, where it's like,
yeah.
right, some team signs him, and because they're like, we'll be the ones that change him. We'll be the ones that fix him, right?
The Saints last year?
I think so, yeah.
Almost have that touchdown on Monday Night Football, and everyone was like, or some primetime game, and everyone was like, Kevin White, finally.
Kevin White back. He was he's with the Saints last year. So he's been with 4 teams: the Bears, Cardinals, Niners, and Saints. But you see it with a lot of these first round picks. Corey Coleman's another one. He was with the Patriots for a minute, right? Who was kind of a bust, but teams are like, he was a first round pick. There was something there. Maybe we can figure it out. N'Keal Harry can't even get one of those. Nobody's even like, well, he's a first round pick, so we'll bring him in and see what's left in the tank. They can't even get that far, which is, I think, says a lot.
Yeah. So tomorrow, the Patriots will take the field at OTAs, barring any last-second violations, but they will be back on the practice fields for the first time in front of us. Alex and I will both be down there at Gillette. And speaking of Yodny Kajus, they're down to a couple tackles, and like last year, that's probably going to be one of the big things we look at. Where are these tackles lined up? They brought in Riley Reif and Calvin Anderson, 2 guys who have some versatility, and where they line up with Trent Brown, that's going to be one of the first things I look at when that starting unit with David Andrews lines up on the field. Do you have any, where you think they're going to lean there to start?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned last year. I think we start there. We didn't know we were supposed to look for this last year, right? We thought it was going to be all right. Isaiah Wynn's the left tackle. Trent Brown's the right tackle. That's what it is. And then they came out. They were in a whole new offensive system. They were moving the tackles around. And we're kind of right back at that this year, except this year we know what to look for. We know to look for it. What is the new offensive system going to be? I hope there's a new one. And what are they going to do with the tackles? What's really interesting about this tackle group is this isn't your usual position battle. It's not 2 guys competing for one spot. It's not even one of those ones where it's like it's 3 guys and you're going to start one, bench one, cut one. It's 3 to 5 players. Like, we don't even know how many players are in this competition because is City Sal a guard or a tackle, right? How many players are in this competition? And there's multiple configurations, right? Saying who are the starting tackles going to be, Riley Reif and Trent Brown, doesn't really, like, it answers the question, but it doesn't, because both of those guys can play left and right. Calvin Anderson can play left and right. I think the only guys they have that are really locked into one side are Connor McDermott is a right tackle. Andrew Stuber's a right tackle. And if City Sal plays tackle, he's going to be a right tackle. So I don't know that they have any true left tackles on the roster, but it's one of those things where, is it Trent Brown on the left, Connor McDermott on the right, where we left off last year? Is it Reif and McDermott? Is it Reif and Brown? Does Anderson make a run at it? And then, if it's him and Brown or him and Reif, they can both play both sides. And how do you decide who's better on which side? So it's some of that we won't get to until training camp because they can't hit each other right now. They can't block each other. So we'll kind of see where they're starting from and go from there. But there's so many. We might also see something tomorrow where one drill, it's, let's say, Brown and Reif left and right, and then the next period it's Brown and Reif right and left, and they switch. I'm kind of prepared to see anything because there's so many different ways they can go about it.
Yeah, they have a lot of options. I still think I'd be surprised if they didn't start this offseason with Trent Brown on the left and Riley Reif on the right.
That's what it feels like.
Now, I like Calvin Anderson's potential. He's kind of mean, he's much younger and much more athletic than
Right.
a guy like Riley Reef, and they usually tend to like the athletic guys on the left and those big bodies like Trent Brown on the right. So again, there's no contact. They're not winning jobs right now, but they could start Brown and Reef. But a strong camp from Calvin Anderson, I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here preparing for the Eagles week 1 and Calvin Anderson's manning Mac Jones's blind side and Trent Brown's kicked back over to the right side.
Yeah, the thing with Reef to me, and you just kind of hit on it, he's what, 34, 35 years old. He's
Yeah.
struggled to get through the last couple seasons. They need to come out of camp with 3 starting caliber tackles, because we know what Trent Brown's injury is, obviously, and you're not counting on Riley Reef to start 17 games. You're just not. It's not realistic. So that backup tackle job, that swing tackle job, and maybe they carry 4 tackles and they keep one of the true right tackles and a guy like Connor McDermott, and then it's Anderson, whoever who can play the left. That backup tackle job's massive, because their top two tackles are guys that don't project to play a full season. So, and again, that's where you get into the value of the versatility, because you can keep Connor McDermott as your third tackle, even if you don't have a true left tackle, because let's say the left tackle gets hurt and it's, Trent Brown on the right side, you can move Trent Brown to the left side, put McDermott over there. So, but I think, yeah, the sorting out the tackle thing is going to be one of the biggest things we look at really all summer, and it starts tomorrow.
Something else we'll be looking at, which again was something we went into last year looking at, this new offense. We have a third offense in 3 years for Mac Jones. If you remember last year, we watched these and we came away and they're running wide zone and they're doing all this play action bootleg, but that's not, they ditched that. That's not what Bill O'Brien does anyway. So what do you think that first look at this new Bill O'Brien offense is kind of gonna look like out there tomorrow?
So I'll tell people, first of all, what I don't think is gonna it's going to include, because we get a ton of questions about this, and I get a ton of questions about this. They're not going back to traditional fullback. They're not going back to power I, under center. To the extent Bill O'Brien uses a fullback, it's that kind of move fullback, hybrid fullback, tight end, Anthony Juszczyk kind of guy. I know some people have suggested Ferkser could play that role. He's probably the best fit for it on the roster of anybody right now. I don't know that it's like a perfect role for him. I think you're going to see, it's going to be a lot of gun. It's going to be a lot of spread out 4 or 5 wide stuff. I think you're going to see, especially with them signing a guy like Mike Gesicki, you might see stuff where it's 5 wide, like with the tight end, or you're going to see a lot of stuff. I don't think they're going to use an inline tight end a ton, or at least less than they have. If it's 4 guys in the pattern or 4 guys like out, not in the backfield, you might see 2 slots. Even if they go 5 wide with the running back, they're going to, maybe one guy's kind of like in close, but I don't think it's going to be that traditional inline, hand in the dirt, running routes out of that. I think that you're going to see guys standing up in the slot and on the boundary to get on both sides. And then it's going to be real quick hitting offense, real quick hitting, get the snap, hit that back foot, get the ball out. Bill O'Brien's offense philosophy is as passing game is predicated on the play is made before the snap rather than after it. And what that means is, to grossly oversimplify it, they go into the huddle with like 3 or 4 calls. And the idea is you get to the line, you see what the defense is giving you based on what you think the defense is running. You go to the call. So the 3 calls are 3 different calls. And one's, again, gross oversimplification. One's designed to beat man, one's designed to beat zone, one's designed to beat the blitz. You get up there, you Mac Jones reads man, he goes to the man call, and it's just boom, get the, they're usually all quick hitters, because you want to keep it moving and not allow the defense to sub, so they have to keep showing their hand and things like that. Once again, gross oversimplification of what it is, but that's basically what I think you're going to look like. The whole thing last year with going under center, play action, deep shots, like constantly, is gone. I don't think we see that. It's not to say they won't do play action. It's not to say they won't throw the ball deep, but Matt Patricia's offense was so there's
different variations of it.
Well, so I guess Matt Patricia's offense, and yes, there were like 3 Matt Patricia offenses, but they all had at least one problem in common. There are setup plays and there are shot plays. Sometimes the Patriots will want to play like 3 or 4 times in a row, and it doesn't really work, but we're like, I'm talking like with McDaniels, right? He'd keep running this random screen, and we're like, why the hell do they keep running this screen? It's not working. And then in the fourth quarter, they'd pump the screen, the wide receiver comes in and goes, and they'd have him wide open down the field. The screen, they keep running it because they're setting it up. They're trying to get the defense baited into a certain look to then run the shot play off the setup. And when Patricia started last year, some of the players said something along the lines of, oh, well, he views the game through a defensive mindset, so he knows what defenses don't want to see. And what I think that turned into was he was so afraid of shot plays, because that's what you don't want as the defensive coordinator. You don't want trend breakers. That's the biggest thing that scares you. If you're constantly running trend breakers, if you're constantly running shot plays without a setup, you're not breaking trends. You're not setting anything up. You're just running the same play over and over and over again. It's just a different kind of play. If Bill O'Brien's offense is anything, it's all setup plays. Like, he really is good at baiting a defense into something. His offense in the run game, I think it's going to be probably back to gap running style. But the big thing with the run game, if it's anything like it was at Alabama, and I don't know that he does this to the same extent that he did at Alabama, because I think the college game just allowed this a little bit more, but I don't think there's going to be a ton of true running plays in their playbook. It should be mostly RPOs. And that's, a run with a pass option attached. So you call the run, but if Max sees the corner come in, breaking down on the run, he can pull that ball out real quick and throw it. It's something they should have been doing the last 2 years. They didn't do it a lot with McDaniels, but they did it well with McDaniels when Mac was here. They really didn't do it at all last year. They had one of the lowest RPO rates in the league last year. But part of the reason Mac Jones was a first-round pick was his success off of RPOs.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's, a big, and I don't know how much of that we'll see in spring practices. That's more of a training camp thing to get into. But that's, hopefully they're putting a lot more OTAs, RPOs in this.
And that, like you said, that's something we've been kind of clamoring for since Mac got drafted here, and they just been reluctant to do it. So hopefully O'Brien, coming from Alabama, where that RPO package at Alabama is kind of like the gold standard in football. So hopefully they integrate more of that in. And I think with O'Brien's offense, it's really predicated on, like you said, attacking those mismatches and really attacking the middle of the field. And when you look at the kind of personnel they brought in, guys like Juju working in the slot, guys like Mike Gesicki running the seam, I think that's where they're going to kind of get back to, is attacking in between the numbers and in the middle of the field. And that's probably where Mac Jones is at his best, doing that.
Before we move on here, I just want to remind everybody about our friends over at FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So FanDuel's going to hook you up. We got the NBA Finals going on right now. They're going to get you going. This will be a fun finals to bet, and specifically, I think, some of the individual player bets, because you have guys, especially on the Heat, right? Caleb Martin, who are coming in so hot, especially off of what they've been doing, and get some fun numbers there. Also, they are still in light mode. They got the white background instead of the dark background, which I think makes it so much easier to read, but all the other apps go in dark mode. There's no better place to bet all playoff action than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/Boston, BOSTON. See it down there below. If you're watching on the stream, FanDuel, official betting partner of the NBA.
Caleb Martin's name sent a shiver down my spine. That's
I said it on this show. I said it on every show I was on. I wrote it on the sport, and we'll get into the Boston Sports Minute in a little bit. Don't think we're not going to do that just because we have a new host. I'm going to put Brian through me pitching a fit again. But I told anybody who would listen, Caleb Martin was going to be a problem for the Celtics in this series. They all rolled their eyes at me. But
we'll get to
there
that.
He was. Got robbed. Got robbed for the Larry Bird trophy.
He should have won that. All right, back to OTAs. Biggest thing's got to be Mac Jones and the quarterbacks. The splitting reps. We don't like to talk about it, but we have to, considering Bill
Right.
Belichick wouldn't say Mac Jones's name for so many months, and he kind of at the owners' meeting, he kind of hinted at there could be a quarterback competition going on here. So I personally don't like it. I think, their goal right now should be let's get Mac Jones ready. Let's get him in this new offense. Let's get him with his new weapons, and let's just kind of hit the ground running and get him as many reps as possible. And unless Bailey Zappi is lighting up the practice field with the 2s and 3s, then it should just be Mac Jones until he clearly proves otherwise.
Yeah, this is Mac Jones' job to lose. But I think if they're going to go through, there's two kinds of quarterback competitions, right? And we've seen them both here the last couple of years. 2020 was, I think, what most people think of when they hear quarterback competition. Both guys, they're getting split reps with the ones. They're divvying everything up 50-50 with the starters. They're getting equal chances. Now, it didn't last that long. Cam Newton wiped the floor with Jarrett Stidham, as I think we all expected. But that's, I think, what a lot of people think of what a quarterback competition is. The other kind of, now, people will also refer to the summer of 2021 as a quarterback competition between Mac and Cam. That's a little different. I actually think the Patriots went into that camp fully expecting Cam Newton to be their week 1 starter. And what happened was, and because remember, even though Mac Jones was getting more reps,
Cam was getting the first team reps.
Cam was the one working with David Andrews. Cam was the one working with Jacoby Myers. Mac Jones was with the backup lineman, with the backup receivers, throwing to Christian Wilkerson and Trey Nixon, right? But he started playing so well with the second unit, they had no chance, no choice, but to start looking at him with the ones. And then obviously Cam Newton getting suspended there for a couple of days in camp because of the COVID rules, and Mac having the practice against the Giants. That's a unique situation that I think sped up the process. But if the Patriots are going to have any sort of quarterback competition this summer, and look, I think you always want to push everybody on the roster. Like that goes unsaid. But it needs to be the second kind, where the only way Bailey Zappi gets his foot in the door is if he kicks the door in. And he's so good with the second team, because you're doing a disservice to Mac Jones. You're doing a disservice, frankly, to Bailey Zappi. You're doing a disservice to the entire team if you're giving them both reps with the ones. Now, we might go out there and see Mac Jones get 15 reps in team drills tomorrow and Bailey Zappi get 25. I could see that happening. But if all 15 of Macs come with the ones and all 25 of Zappies come with the backups, it's not a quarterback competition. It's not. They're just, that's the way they're divvying up the reps, because as they do in training camp, as they usually do, they want the starters getting the reps behind closed doors, not in front of us. That's what it's always been. So I'm not looking at it that way, but they have to get Mac Jones ready for the season in my mind. They need to put all their resources into figuring out whether or not he is the guy, because this is the crucial offseason coming up with the 5th-year option, all of that, and a great quarterback class in the draft. They've got to give Mac Jones every chance to succeed. Will they? I don't know. Bill might split time between the starters. I think it would be a bad idea, but I could also see him doing that. But to what extent there should be a quarterback competition? Yes. If Bailey Zappi's great with the second team, we can start talking about it. Until then, they've got to have the focus on Mac Jones. They really do.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we go out there tomorrow and they're splitting first team reps, but
yeah,
you kind of hit the nail on the head there. You got to give Mac Jones first team, get him going, and unless he either sinks the ship or Bailey Zappi, it just is like otherworldly. You got to just roll with Mac Jones and get him ready, and then take that into the season and see where that goes in this new offense. I mean, 3 offenses in 3 years, even though there will probably be some similarities with this one and maybe his rookie year one, but you got to get him as much experience as possible and get him ready with these new offensive weapons too.
Yeah, there's that old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't really have a quarterback, right? And if they really believed Bailey Zappi could push Mac Jones. Why didn't Bailey Zappi play late last year? That's what I'd say. I think that the organizational idea, whether Bill likes it or not, and by the way, I wonder how much say Bill has in this. I wonder if Bill O'Brien, when he signed, said it's going to be, we're not replicating the Bears game. If it's my offense, I get to pick the quarterback, right? And I get people in the chat, I get it. They're saying, the best players should play, and Bill said it's a clean slate, and both Bills said it's a clean slate, and you put the best players on the field. I do get that, and that's true to an extent. That's why I'm saying if Bailey Zappi is really good with the backups, yeah, okay, you see what he looks like with the starters. But do they, when they went into camp, at any other position, are we saying, well, Devontae Parker wasn't perfect last year. Put Trey Nixon out there with the ones. Let's see what Trey Nixon can do with the ones, right? Well, we didn't really see Sean Wade last year. We don't know what he can do. He should get as many reps as Christian Gonzalez, because you got to know who the best player is, because the best player needs to play. It's all within reason. Mac Jones has the higher ceiling. He was the first round pick. He was the guy last year. They need to try to make this thing work with Mac Jones before they go elsewhere. Otherwise, they're just hamstringing themselves.
And your first point there, where will Bill be? That will kind of be Bill Belichick. That will be interesting, because last year, again, he was much more involved on the offensive side of the ball with Judge and Patricia. But now you have Bill O'Brien, who can obviously run an offense by himself. He was the head coach in this league. How much does Belichick get involved there, or is he just back on the defensive side of the ball and they're saying, hey, this is Bill O'Brien's ship. He's steering it. Get out of my way.
Yeah, and look, I know a lot of people are down on Bill. I've certainly been more critical of him this offseason than I have in the past, but I don't doubt for a second Bill can cook something up with this defense.
Oh, yeah.
Like this defense, the talent is outstanding. The talent level just across the board. I want Bill on defense, not just for the offense's sake. I want Bill on defense for the defense's sake. And yes, you bring in Bill O'Brien, who, like you said, has been a head coach. And remember when we were going through the whole thing about who should the OC be, we kept saying they need a head coach of the offense. And that's what Josh McDaniels was. He wasn't the offensive coordinator. He was the head coach of the offense. You bring in Adrian Clem, who was an assistant head coach at Oregon and has been around. You bring in this experienced coaching staff. Let them do their jobs. I think that that's big, and that's certainly something we'll be watching for tomorrow.
And you mentioned the defense. I'll get to that in a second, but one more thing on the offensive side of the ball. Yep. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with Mac, but year 2 of Tyquan Thornton, they need, some improvement. And you look back, I was watching old Alabama with Bill O'Brien 2 years ago. Jameson Williams, similar, he's a better prospect, better player, similar body type, speedster, really skinny guy. How he got him free, and because the thing with Thornton is skinny, want to get him to avoid contact at the line of scrimmage. So Bill O'Brien, used him in stack formations, used him in motion, and got him free releases off the line of scrimmage. And I think, a bump from Tyquan Thornton, maybe they're expecting it because they didn't, make a drastic move at receiver in the offseason, but that would go a long way in elevating this offense to the next level.
Yeah, so that's another competition I'm interested to watch. I think we know it's going to be, at least when they're in base 11, right? Devontae Parker at the X, Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot. The Z competition between Kendrick Bourne and Tyquan Thornton, and if you want to throw Kayshon Boutte in there, you can. I think he's probably like a 2-year project guy just because he's coming off that ankle injury. We'll see what kind of shape he's in. It's subject to change, right? But they're different kind of Z receivers, but I think they're both Z receivers. But you're right. Using Tyquan Thornton in the slot, getting him in motion before the snap where he can't get hit coming off the line, where he can build up some speed before he gets going. I don't think they ever came close to really figuring out how to use Tyquan Thornton last year. It's not surprising, but they never really came close to figuring that out. They have to unlock that role. And I know we all kind of want them to unlock Tyquan Thornton because he's on a rookie contract and they drafted him and all that. But even if it's Bourne, it's still going to be annoying because they blew a top 50 receiver pick. But they need to get the number I've kind of been looking at. Can you get like 40 catches, 500-600 yards? 40, 50 catches, 500-600 yards out of that role. If they do that, they're in great shape. it's going to be Thornton or Bourne that does that. And, for Bourne, that's going back to the numbers he put up in 2021. So I think he can do it. Question, can he do it in this offense? And obviously Thornton last year is very limited, so he's never put up numbers like that. But that's where I'm at with them. Like or between the two of them, like they somehow need to get that production out of that role. And it's two guys that I think maybe disappointing isn't the right word, because I don't think, at least to an extent, neither of their performances last year were a fault of their own. Tyquan Thornton got hurt. It happens. Kendrick Bourne got benched for absolutely no reason. Usually doesn't happen, but apparently in this case it did. But those are two guys that I think that between the two of them, they need to unlock something there.
But also just his body type, how he is, because a lot of guys, they talk about this is their first full off season because they don't have to worry about all the draft and the combine stuff. So, if he comes out and he's maybe 10 pounds heavier, 10 pounds of muscle, that could go a long way for him. So just seeing his evolution and how Bill O'Brien plans to use him, that will certainly be interesting. Anything else on the offense before we jump over to the defense?
How they use the running backs is certainly something to watch. That's another one where I don't entirely know we get the answer to that now. I think that's probably something more in camp, but is Ramondre Stevenson going to be the early down back? Is he going to be the late down? Is he going to be passing down back? Is he going to be both again? Are they going to run him into the ground? I hope not. If he is the early down back, which I kind of feel like makes more sense, where he's the primary early down back and the secondary third down back, who is the primary passing down back? Is it James Robinson? Is it Pierre Strong? Is it Ty Montgomery? That's going to be a close competition. I think you could make an argument that only one running back on their roster is a roster lock, and that's Stevenson. Now, that's not to say all of the other guys will get cut. They're not going to cut Robinson and Montgomery and Strong and Harris and JJ Taylor, but could it be Ramondre and the two rookies from last year? Yes. Could it be Ramondre and the two veterans and Montgomery and Robinson and the two rookies from last year get cut? I could see that as well. So there's a ton to sort out at the running back position. That's an important position in Bill O'Brien's offense. Jahmyr Gibbs led Alabama in receptions last year, in addition to carries. So that's a position they got to figure out, and they can't figure it out by saying we're going to give the ball to Ramondre Stevenson 250 times again, because to no fault of Ramondre's own, this is just the modern NFL. You can't win when you have a bell cow back in the modern NFL. You can't do it. Look at the Cowboys with Zeke. Look at the Titans with Derrick Henry. Look at the Vikings with Dalvin Cook. All of these teams come up short late in the season because their running backs get gassed. I would rather parse Ramondre Stevenson's carries out during the season. If he's going to have a bunch of 30-touch games, I'd rather have them be in December and January than be in September and October, right? Because I'll tell you this, if he's having 30-touch games in October, I'm going to be sitting here saying, damn, well, when you need him late in the year against Buffalo and you need him late in the year against the Jets, he's going to be banged up, just like I said last year. And look what happened. They need to avoid doing that again. So we'll see how they're going to kind of mix and match all those guys.
I'm all in on the Pierre Strong train there. I think
I am too.
Yeah, you saw limited action last year down the stretch, that Arizona game and the Vegas game, but his speed is just on a different level. And if they could get that in the offense more, I think that would help them out a lot, getting that unlocked, whether that's in the passing game or if that's just kind of a spell back to Ramondre Stevenson. But that speed would be awesome in the offense. So jumping over to defense, it's a little tougher on the defense with no contact.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much on the defensive line. So, guys like Keon White, you're going to have to wait till training camp. The corners, the jam. But Christian Gonzalez, even without contact, just seeing him on the field is going to be exciting, and watching him move in person. No pads, but, seeing if it looks like it does how we looked at it in the Oregon film and the Colorado film.
And that 1 10-second clip they shared on social media
that everyone lost their mind over, myself included. But watching him, move around and seeing if they throw him right in, is he just going to start right off the bat, or are they going to ease number 50 in there to the cornerback rotation?
They generally play their first round picks.
Yeah.
They generally don't sit those guys. So as hesitant as they've been to play rookies as a whole the last couple of years, look at the running back position last year. First round picks play. So I think Christian Gonzalez is right out there. The question is, who's he opposite? Is he opposite Jonathan Jones? Is he opposite Jack Jones? Is he opposite Jalen Mills? That to me is where the questions start, because the biggest question for me on defense, and these kind of go hand in hand, how are they replacing Devin McCourty?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's going to be a 1-for-1 swap. I don't think we're going to see them do one thing and be like, okay, this is the new thing they're doing. I think it's going to be different coverages, going to 2 high shells, playing Mills deep, playing Duggar deep, maybe playing Jonathan Jones deep, maybe playing Miles Bryant deep, in 2 high looks, not necessarily center fielder. I think it's going to be by rotation, by committee replacing him, but I'm curious what kind of things they can cook up. And that also dictates Christian Gonzalez, because if you're putting Jonathan Jones back there, do they trust Jack Jones to be a full-time boundary corner? I don't know, especially after the suspension last year. Who knows where he stands with the team?
Yeah.
Right. And after that, it does start to fall off a little bit. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of shuffle the whole defense around, because McCourty's a big loss. You can't deny it. He's a big loss, and they're going to have to get creative to kind of fill in.
On Gonzalez, that's when we were talking about that first round pick before the draft, that's what I was saying. I want them to go get someone that their rookie year is going to play 75-80% of the snaps.
Yeah.
And if you have to deal with some growing pains, fine, but get someone in there and let them play all the time. On the back end, yeah, they have a ton of options. The safety's already there. They can move Miles Bryant. I'd expect Jalen Mills to be back there with the safeties. And maybe they just keep rotating to be unpredictable. Maybe they lean more into some 2 high looks, like they've kind of been leaning towards the last few years. And I think McCourty even said it himself. Now that he's gone, they could be, he said, better. I don't think they're going to be better, but they'll be less predictable. And he says offenses, they don't know where these people will be. You could have Jabril Peppers lining up and then shooting back out, so they'll have a lot of options on how to mix and match that. But this first look could be, 3rd and 10, that Raiders drive at the end of the year last year. We need one stop. Who's going out there and who's going to be single high or the 2 high safeties?
That's more what it is when they get into the 2-minute drill stuff. And this, again, might be something we don't see until camp. But when they get into the 2-minute drill stuff, what's the safety look? That's what I'm going to be very interested to see.
And you don't expect Marte Mapo to be out there, do you?
No, just the way they talked about him after that would be like the thing to watch, is where is he playing? Is he playing off the ball? Is he playing on the edge? Is he playing safety? That would be, I'd be super excited for that one, but he had shoulder surgery in the off season. He might be out there, we might see him on the field, but when they get into 11s, I doubt he's on the field. I doubt he has his helmet on. So that's one to wait for the summer. I put it in my preview because I didn't want to totally ignore it. My preview on 985thesportshub.com, but it's also, again, it's a different situation there. We'll get to him in a couple months.
And the only other guy we know is going to be not out there is Michael Onwenu,
right?
Who had ankle surgery.
Yeah.
So he won't be out there. But I believe that is it from the injury front. They probably won't have perfect attendance. There's usually guys who miss or who are down below on the other fields, even though all the coaches have been saying it's been good attendance throughout the offseason, the voluntary portion. But there's always a few guys missing, and we know those 2 guys will be out with injuries.
I've been doing this for 6 years now. I don't think I've ever heard them be like, yeah, we wish more people were here.
Yeah.
They usually like the attendance, but yeah, it'll be a little interesting to see who steps in for Onwenu, just because maybe that, if it's City Sal, there's the answer to that question. Okay, well, he's a guard. If not, is it Antonio Mafi? Is it Chase and Hines, who they drafted last year? They have a lot of young linemen, and it's just to get back to that side real quick, because we really talked about the tackles, but they got Mafi, they've got Sal, they've got Chase and Hines. Are they going, even if they bring them back, and people are saying, oh, you cut guys, you bring them back on the practice squad, or re-sign them after somebody goes on IR. The thing you got to remember about doing that with players on rookie contracts is you burn the rookie contract. You don't get them back on that same contract. You usually get them back on a 1-year deal. So those guys kind of have an inside track, especially if we see Chase and Hines out there, right? Because it's a lot easier to cut James Ferentz, who's already on a 1-year deal. You're going to get him back on basically where the money you left off with. even a guy like Connor McDermott compared to some of these rookies. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets the preference there, whether it's the younger interior offensive lineman or some of the older guys.
And nothing else defensively you're looking for?
Yeah, it's so, I mean, like, I'm excited to see like Keon White, but
it's tough.
We're not really going to see what he can do until the pads come on. So it's a little tougher for defense or something like this.
And you'll have your stopwatch for Bryce Behringer, I'm assuming, right?
So the thing I really want to track this year, I am going to have the stopwatch for Bryce Behringer and Corliss Waitman. You might get deputized. Somebody down there is getting deputized. I wanted, so I went back and watched some of the stuff last year, and I need to actually time it out. So do you know what operation time is?
From snap to hold to kick?
Yeah. So from when the ball snapped to when it comes off the kicker's foot. They had a lot of kicks blocked last year. That's usually a sign of a poor operation time. I'm curious what their operation time was last year, and I want to see with a younger group what they can get it up to. So I might need to go double stopwatch or need somebody to help me out with that one. But it'll be interesting to watch him. That's the one. I don't know how much of a position battle kicker is just because they took Chad Ryland in the 4th round. Like he has to be pretty bad to not make the team. I think his job's pretty safe compared to Nick Folk. 6th rounder, Behringer, that's probably a little more of a battle. That's one we can start gauging here. The other positions, no, you can't gauge who's beating out who for a spot based off anything more than just who's getting the reps. You can't go off of what the product is on the field until we get to camp. Punter's the one spot where I think you can look at it and say, all right, who was better? Who was the inside track on the job based off minicamp?
And was it Ryland who had kickoff experience in college?
They both do. They both
did? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so that's another thing is how are they running kickoff drills with the rule change?
The rules.
I think they may try to return a lot of kicks this year. I wonder if they look at it and say,
teams aren't expecting it.
Right. Not even teams aren't expecting it. Teams are going to be rusty because most teams are just going to call fair catch. So if nobody's used to covering kicks, let's make them cover kicks. So that'll be interesting to see.
And in that special teams department, is Joe Judge going to be out there and like hands-on coaching?
Good question.
Because we didn't know, and then what his role is, and then that report was that he was Patriots special teams coach and he's hosting meetings. So is he basically acting like the coordinator for Cam McCord, or is he going to be out there hands-on? That's we don't know. So we'll see that tomorrow as well on the special teams department.
Well, the other thing is he out there at all after costing his boss $50,000 personally, right? I think he will be, but you get the point. He cost his boss $50,000. He's still here. I think does that cover OTAs?
I think that's good. Should we get into Celtics?
Well, so we're going to put you through both here because it's your first show. We have 2 special segments on the show. I want to close with the Boston Sports Minute. But first, we are going to do a quick college football minute because it is starting to feel like college football season. We are starting to get into summer camps. The transfer portal is kind of winding down. And I will pull up here on FanDuel, obviously, our partners at FanDuel. The college football win totals came out the other day, and there were some interesting ones. So I want to get your thoughts on those. If my phone will... I can find where football is. There it is. NCAA football. Here we go. NCAA futures. There. All right. So I can't find the ones. All right, let's do this. So the favorites right now for the championship next year, top 4, Georgia's plus 220, Ohio State's plus 600, Alabama's plus 600, Michigan's plus 1,000. I think everybody's sleeping. How's USC not a favorite right now to get to the college football playoff? Like, so last year, my 4 teams were Alabama, Ohio State, USC, and Texas. I haven't locked in my 4 this year, but I'll tell you this: USC is going to be one of them. That's absolutely insane.
I know they were right. Didn't they miss it last year just because like they lost the last game of the season? They lost
Pac-12 championship, to Utah.
But, like, how do you not have Caleb Williams in the it's Caleb Williams.
So they are fifth. They are fifth in the. Some of it might be just the Pac-12's a weaker conference.
That's true.
Pac-12 after dark, but that's one to watch. Also, we can bring this back to the Patriots here too. We just kind of talked about the stakes for Mac Jones. You got to figure out if he's the guy. If he's not, by October, Brian, we're going to be getting real familiar with some of these names. I don't think they can be bad enough to get Caleb Williams.
No.
They're not going to be the worst team in the league.
Probably,
you look at a team like Arizona. Who are you going to say?
Probably not Drake May either, right? Unless he just bombs this year. But
so, yeah, UNC quarterbacks have a history of kind of dipping in and out. But, yeah, Drake May would be a stretch. But I just wanted to pull up here because I'm curious. So, North Carolina, the win total is over under 8.5 wins. That feels really low if Drake May is the guy we're being told he is. I'm not a firm believer in Drake May heading into the season just because, again, those UNC quarterbacks. But that feels low. The other guys to know, Quinn Ewers from Texas, Michael Penix from Washington, Bo Nix from Oregon, Shadur Sanders from Colorado, KJ Jefferson from Arkansas. How much do you think we're going to be talking about these guys in relative to the Patriots this fall?
Hopefully not.
But, fair enough.
I think they'll be. You're not going to be talking about the top guys. They're going to be good enough.
No.
But I mean, you do look at the first bunch of the first 4 or 5 games of the schedule. Like they could be 1-3 after the first month, and then they do have a little weaker part where I think they can kind of get back 500. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the first month they're sitting at 1-3, and we're talking about some of these guys at all.
All right, let's get into the Boston Sports Minute now because the Celtics, they let us down last night once again. They got close in terms of they won the 3 in a row, but everybody was saying to me when they came back for Game 5, it was like, oh, it'd be so them to win that Game 4 and give us hope and then lose Game 5. And I said, no. It would be so them to lose Game 7, to get it to Game 7 and lose it. There are 4 players, I think, or 4 people, sorry, 3 players, 4 people, I think seriously need to be considered being moved this offseason, and there might be a 5th. So player-wise, I have been somebody who has been firmly on the bandwagon, firmly on the wagon of keep Jaylen Brown in Boston and see what you can do with these guys, see how far you can go with them. I think we've seen how far Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can go together. Because Jaylen Brown does not seem to be okay with the idea of being the number 2 player on the team. And if he's not going to embrace that role, it's just not going to work. And people will say he's young, he's still up and coming. It's been 3 years of the same thing now. He really hasn't grown in some key areas. He's struggled dribbling. Like right away, the turnovers. He 8 turnovers last night. He always piles up turnovers in the big games. The hero ball, the inability to work within the system of the offense. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you got to find somebody who's going to fit better with Jason Tatum. Now, maybe a way you do that is you trade Jaylen Brown with Robert Williams. I really like Robert Williams. I think he's a super fun player. I think he's a kind of throwback player. When they were all quitting through those first 3 games, and even in Game 7, Robert Williams was still playing with fight, but they refused to play more than 20 minutes a game. And if that's going to be the case, it's not worth having him on the team. Use him to get somebody to maybe help out Jason Tatum a little bit more. Third guy's Grant Williams. He's just got to go. Aggravating player. I think he's emblematic of the attitude, focus problems this team has. And the fourth one, surprise, surprise, Joe Mazzulla said last night he did not think the Celtics were too reliant on the 3. He does not think the offensive approach needs to change. You know when the Celtics were at their best last night, Brian?
When Derek White was attacking the basket.
Well, that, yes. But also, there were a couple possessions where they're like moving the ball. 4 or 5 guys are touching it on the possession. They're getting the Heat to over-rotate. But they stopped doing that. They kept just jacking up threes. Every time the ball movement would get going, they needed to make an offensive adjustment. They never did. There were so many adjustments they needed to make. They never did. Brian Scalabrine reported today that some of the Celtics assistants are likely to follow Ime Udoka to Houston. So you talk about, well, maybe you just add to Joe Mazzulla's staff and help him. Well, no, it sounds like the staff's actually going to get gutted before anything else. I know he's due a lot of money. I know Brad Stevens likes him, but he's not the coach for this team. He's a negative impact. You can win with a coach that's a net neutral. I don't think he's a neutral. And if these moves don't get done, we start talking about Brad Stevens at that point. That's where I'm at with them, because it has been the same thing year after year. They keep losing these games in the same way, the same issues. They tried changing up the bench, right? They made all those moves last year. They brought in Malcolm Brogdon. They brought in Derek White. They changed the coach. They changed like the philosophical approach to it. They've been a defensive team. They've been an offensive team, because they're trying to keep that core together of Tatum, Brown, and Smart. They've changed everything but those three, and it's still not working. And I don't want to hear they're young, because Jaylen Brown's going into his 8th NBA season. He might be 27, but that's not young in the NBA. Jason Tatum is not NBA years. It's time to actually make a major change on the roster, and they do need to go back and get another coach. I don't care that it's 4 coaches in 4 years. That's just as embarrassing as 3-3, and Joe Mazzulla is not cutting it.
Yeah, so that was Shams reported today that Mazzulla had like 3 years and 14 million guaranteed on that extension he signed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if they would just eat that. Like,
I don't think they will, but that's a bad extension to give him when they gave it to him.
But they said, so Shams said that, and then he said they were going to focus on rebuilding his staff, maybe adding some more veteran, which if they're going to keep him, they need to do that. On Brown, unless like you have to get a trade that like you think is just going to really make you that much better or better fit, because like I don't like.
Well, obviously,
what are you trading Brown for that's going to make you a better team, right? You've been in the Eastern Conference Finals 5 out of the last 7 years, 1 trip to the finals. Like, you're getting there. Winning, like, it's hard to win championships. Just so, like, if you're a team that's getting there, and obviously you have to make some, adjustments. You need an Al Horford. He's not getting any younger. Grant Williams is going to go. Peyton Pritchard is probably going to get traded. So you need to tinker the roster a little bit, but your core is getting you there. So,
but isn't this what we've said about them the last few years? And it's just the same result over and over and over, right? And to people who say, well, yeah, guys usually don't win till they're like in 27, 28. That also came with massive change. Michael Jordan got Phil Jackson. LeBron went to Miami, right? Really, the only exception is Kobe to that. A lot of these guys, even Kevin Durant, right, had to go to a new team. Yeah, they all win when they're 27. It also comes after either a massive change in their scenario or they go to a different scenario, right? The Bulls made a ton of roster moves leading up to that run with Jordan. As for Jaylen Brown, I'm not trading him just to trade him, obviously, but, I think there's a number of routes they can go. I look at a guy like Damian Lillard, would, I think, be a great fit for this team. I know that, some people have suggested that maybe the Hornets are in a spot where they have to move LaMelo Ball. I think would be a really interesting fit. If the rumors are true down in Dallas that Luka wants out, that's the one I jump on.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, Peyton Pritchard, all the picks they want for Luka Doncic, right? All in on that. The one guy I'm not doing is Simmons. I won't trade Peyton Pritchard for Ben Simmons. I do not want Ben Simmons anywhere near the Boston Celtics. No. That guy just is a contagious loser. But yeah, I think you got to get, they got to do something to really shake this thing up, because the core as it is not the answer. It's not. And I know they keep getting close, and that's great, but hey, we keep getting close, so we're just going to tinker on the margins and not deal with the core, is how you become the Bruins, who have won how many championships in the last 10 years? Exactly. Right. The Celtics, to an extent, are just the Bruins with a worse Patrice Bergeron, that being Al Horford. They're kind of just the Bruins with the worst Patrice Bergeron. So the Bruins never made that move. They never did. They, Bergeron was here. Marchand was here. They re-signed Pasternak. They kept bringing Chara back until the very end. They kept bringing Tuukka back. Even after Tuukka Rask retired, they still brought him back. They brought him out of retirement. They were committed to win with that core. And yeah, they got close a bunch of times. And they were definitely a good team, and they were fun to watch and all of that. But I think there is this idea among Celtics fans that if you keep Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown together and they keep growing, they're going to win like 5 titles. And that would be awesome. But the reality is you can't win 5 titles without winning 1. And I think at a certain point, the focus needs to flip from winning 5 titles to winning a title. And I think that the way these playoffs went and the way this season went should be the genesis for that change in philosophy.
Yeah, there has been a lot of, keep Jalen because it's good for the long-term future, but you gotta get one first. Like, you gotta get one with Jason Tatum here, and he's obviously not going anywhere, so it would be Jalen because is he up for the Supermax now, or does that have to come next offseason?
No, so that's going to be this offseason. So
Okay.
they have to decide on him. That's the other reason I say you have to do it now, because you have to make the decision on him. Are you paying him or not? Like it's like with Mac Jones. I'd love to have 2 more years to figure out what the Patriots are going to do with Mac Jones, because last year's a lost year. We really only have 1 year of data on him. You ideally want to have 3 before you make that decision, but the contract dictates the timeline, and this is just where they are.
Yeah. I could see them giving it to him and trying it again for a year and then a year or 2, because when does the CBA kick in 2 years? Do you know?
That sounds right.
The new CBA. So, like, you give them a year or 2 and then one or 2 more years, and then if it really doesn't work, then Jalen's still only gonna be 28 and he's under contract, so someone would trade for him then still, unless he really bottoms out, but I don't know, it's a tough position to be in. Brad Stevens it's time for him to do something and, get this team over the hump.
Right.
So, anything else you got there?
I think, now we go watch football tomorrow.
Football. It is football season. We're back.
Well, we sort of watch football. Bill will even tell us what we're doing doesn't resemble football, but after however many months off, it's football.
Yep. So Bill will be speaking at 11 tomorrow. Alex and I will be down there. You can follow him at Real Alex Barth. Follow me. I am Brian Hines. You can read both of us on our respective websites. I believe we'll be back either Wednesday or Thursday to recap what we watch tomorrow at OTAs. So make sure you have your Patriots Press Pass notifications on, and we'll let you know when we go live. But other than that, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.